Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to our Omni live stream from Zero to AI Ready. And we're going to be doing live model tuning in Omni. Today we have our CEO, Colin Zima, diving into how you can get your model ready for and optimized for AI. This is something Colin has spent a lot of time doing in the product just on our own data and working to help customers do. So we figured that it was definitely worthwhile in sharing what we've learned and just have Colin walk through his process live. For folks who are already using Omni, this is going to be especially helpful because you're just going to be able to follow Colin's process live in the product. So be sure just to share your questions as we go, and we'll try to monitor and get to everything as much in real time as possible. For folks who are new to Omni, don't worry, we're going to spend a couple minutes context setting up front just to help you kind of understand a little bit more about the platform before we dive in. And also, before we get started, I do just want to remind folks that we are recording. So if you need to drop early or if you want to come back to it, you can access it again on LinkedIn just using this same link. So don't worry too much about that. And with that, I will pass it over to Colin.
Cool. Okay, so we're trying something new for this one. So I'm going to go through like 4 slides to explain the approach that we're taking. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to start with some really naive data sets and show you how to tune it a little bit. And then we're going to sort of progressively just do that with a couple of data sets that I haven't really touched. And then I'll actually show you an anonymized version of our internal data and the impact that this tuning actually has. So we can actually play with some of the stuff and use it the exact same way that you're using it or that we are using it internally. We will probably run into some weird stuff here and there because we're just going to do completely brand new things. That's actually sort of part of the lesson here is that it's going to be more guess and check than maybe you're used to. So with that, let's dive in. Okay. So a couple slides to set context. Um, so the first thing is probably the most common question that I get about AI. The first one is always like, how good is your AI? And as you'll see in this demo, anyone that gives you a sort of assertive answer that their AI has some score out of 100 is just sort of making things up. And the reason for that is because managing the sort of AI and the natural language experience is a process. You really need to model your data. So we actually have to have data that fits together properly. We need to, there's some of that can be magic, like computers will get smarter at modeling data, but we need to make sense of the data in our database. We then need to actually go through the process of translating how people talk, and it's going to be different inside different businesses and different structures. We need to actually translate that back into language, and then we can actually refine the results. And that's probably the most important reason why it's very hard to measure quality. You'll see in some of these really simple data sets that we can be pretty wrong right away. And with a very small set of actions, we can make it correct. And so the most important way to think about this is that the quality of your AI and the natural language connection to your database is not static. It is entirely in your control. So just as an example, I actually go through the logs of how folks internally, the questions that they are asking, and based on the feedback that they give or the sort of sessions, and again, like we'll go through this a little bit, I actually go through weekly and tune up, like, oh, this person was talking in this way. Let me make sure that we have actually written it that way. And again, like I'll show you examples, but the whole idea here is that it's not static and it's a lot more experimental. And that can be a little bit uncomfortable, but once we get those sort of really nice model foundation pieces, it means that we have control. And that's actually what makes it so sort of magical on the back end. So the way this works in practice, we sit on top of your database, again, like any database that you have. Ultimately, we are writing SQL down to the warehouse, returning result sets. Sorry, I'm going backwards. You can query in a variety of different ways. So again, we're going to spend all of our time on the natural language experience, but there are spreadsheets. You can write SQL. There's point and click. The one thing that I will note about those different sort of modalities is what we found is that part of the power of the AI experience is actually being able to sort of move between these things. So write a query in natural language, refine it with the UI. Write a query in natural language, add a calculation. And we can actually take advantage of these building blocks in the AI as well. So for example, you can ask for running totals. You can build Excel calculations. You can turn on column totals. You've got this sort of mix of regular application functionality and the sort of isolated AI experience. I'm really bad at this. And then ultimately, you just sort of deliver dashboards and things like that. Um, so this is a pretty simple example where we're taking, show me revenue for the last 6 months. We know that revenue means total sales price. And the thing that we're going to take away from this is that sometimes natural language is just good and you get that sort of magic experience where like synonyms are amazing. Sometimes it's not. And then we have to go add explicit synonyms and the AI gets better at answering questions. Again, like there's really not a lot of depth that is required to understand these things. It's a process of realizing that you need to enumerate things that may be ambiguous. And again, like, I'll show you a bunch of examples. Um, and so when we think about structuring data, this is the last slide. Um, like make sure that the data is well structured and explainable. You know, add joins so that you can actually describe the data and facet it in the ways. We're going to do some adding of filters just to sort of play around with making sure that the result set is curated in the way that your user expects. Again, the example that I love to cite here is if you're exporting Salesforce via something like Fivetran, you're going to get deleted records. You don't need your user to have to understand that there's deleted records in the data set. We should be always filtering those out. There are other types of examples, like we're going to do one with some NCAA basketball, where maybe we want to default filter it for a certain year, or we want to default filter it for Division One. But filters that can be attached to the UI that the user could then tune. You obviously want permissions. You want to hide the garbage so that people don't just grab a field that obviously the data team knows that no one uses, but the end user has no idea. And then we want to name things properly. That is really all there is to it. And let's get into it. Again, I would say we're going to just be kind of messing around. If people have questions, ask. If people have queries that they would like to try to actually understand how we can go optimize them, also do it. But I'm just going to sort of riff. Okay. So this is our playground environment. This is just a place where we sort of mess around with data. And I'm going to start with a really simple data set just so folks can understand the building blocks. So this is an e-commerce data set. And you can see that we've got some transactions and we've got some users and we've got some products and we've got something that someone built yesterday. So I'm just going to ask a simple question. How many users do we have? And we have a bunch of different UIs for this also. I'm going to stay in the workbook because this is really the builder experience. Okay, you know what? I think I actually turned off the AI experience here. So let me turn it back on. Let's add that back. And let's go back. How many users do we have? Okay, it's going to use user count. Okay, I knew this was gonna fail. So this actually failed in the way that I wanted it to. So we asked how many users do we have? It did something logical. It grabbed the user count. Now, for data people, there's more nuance to just grabbing the user count. And for kind of like the anyone who's familiar with semantic BI might have noticed that we have a transactions topic and we have a users topic. So the transactions topic is about transactions. So as you might expect, when we count users in the transactions topic, we're counting users that have transactions. This is something that you could go explain to someone at your company or something like that, but there is a little bit of subtlety to this. And we have 114,000 users that have transactions. We can jump over to users, and you'll notice that we have a very different number. We have 143,000 users. And this is because we asked about users in the context of users. And again, so it looks like 30,000 users in this data set have not transacted. Now, going back to our original question, which is like, we now have a type of query that, frankly, the AI got wrong. And this is where we actually need to start teaching it. Like, I wish that it could have hit the user's topic. There are probably ways that we could make that happen better. But again, the nice thing here is that we have control. So as a first step, the thing to understand is that we have context that we can add in multiple levels. So we can add it at the model level across everything on this database connection. We can add it at the topic level. So you can think about this at like the table or the virtual table level. And we can also add it on fields. And we're going to do all of that. But I'm going to start with something really simple. Let's go to the user's topic. And we will add our first bit of AI context. When folks ask questions about users, start here. And I'm going to take something similar and go put it in transactions. Um, you know what? It looks like it's already doing that pretty well. So we said, answer questions about transactions or revenue here, filter for status complete when counting orders or revenue. Great. So we added this very small piece of context. Let's actually save it. And let's clear out our query and clear out our AI session. And let's close the SQL and let's go try again. Oops. Let's just make a new tab so we have no memory. Delete. How many users do we have? And the thing to note is that when we do it in that sort of open interface, it can move between topics. You can also lock it to a topic. Not important now, but we can sort of get into it later. But you'll notice that it helped you find the total number of users by using the user count measure. So it picked the same measure, but now it actually picked the user's topic. So we've actually managed to nudge it towards, by default, answering users' questions from the users table, not through the transactions table. Again, this is the small concept, but this is really all there is to modeling AI on top of sort of, again, like well-modeled data. I'm going to get another one wrong here. So how many in the United States? And this is an example where, again, like AI is going to do something interesting because it knows that the United States is a country and we have country in our data set. So great, it takes that, it plugs it in. Now, it's plugging that in incorrectly because if we go look inside this country field, you will note that the values are UK and USA. And at this point, we are not passing that context to the AI. So let's clear that out. And let's add some field-specific context. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here, and you can see that we can add AI-specific descriptions. So you can think about this as a hidden robotic description. We can add synonyms. We'll even suggest them. For the most part, I don't even recommend bothering with this unless you have synonyms that are atypical or sort of very specific. And again, I'll show you some examples of that later, because AI is pretty good at synonyms. It's a language parsing. But we'll add summary values. And so here we're adding just an array of values. And this could be a sample or this could be the full list. We have arguments for both, but let's add that. And I'm going to go say, same question as before, how many in the United States? And amusingly, it always apologizes for getting that wrong, but now it actually filters the data set correctly. And so this is an example of adding field-specific context. And just those two building blocks, so field-specific context and model-specific context, are really the sort of foundational building blocks for nudging AI towards doing the right thing on top of these data sets. So all we're really going to do in the rest of this experience is just take advantage of those individual pieces and do some data modeling and essentially curation. And that's effectively what designing for AI is here. So with that, let's clear this out. And I will head over to this NCAA data set. Cool. So for folks that want to see it, we've got two sort of BigQuery public data sets here. We've got one about bike share trips, and maybe we can do that in a second. And we have one about NCAA basketball. And so we've got some teams, we've got some tournament games, we've got some mascot data. But the first thing that we can do is just say, and I've made three topics. So I made one for team seasons, one for games, and one for player games. But what data do I have access to? And the nice thing is that kind of the more context that we add, the more that we can actually lead this question. But even without doing any modeling at all, we can sort of say, just based on title, it will say things like this topic likely contains historical basketball data for NCAA basketball games, game level data, player level data. This knows that it's joined to other things. And just as an example of the types of stuff that you can do, this is our internal environment, but I'll just show you a quick example. You can even add metadata on these topics. So what data does Colin own? And again, we've added a little bit of metadata on topics that will actually answer that, Colin owns a bunch of the sort of Salesforce data. and we'll sort of, you know, it'll run queries. This is all fake data, but it'll actually point to, who is doing what, what is actually interesting in this environment. We'll come back to that in a second. So let's actually go into one of these data sets real quick, and we can sort of stay at the high level and sort of have it guess, but let's just narrow it down a little bit. Tam, I saw you come off. What's up?
Hi, yes. We have a couple questions.
Yeah.
Hi, Rob. Thanks for joining us. So Rob's asking any ideas on how well it handles conflicting information and if there's some type of hierarchy that's going to be respected. He elaborates a little bit more, if we gave context in two different topics that should be used to answer user counts, which one will the AI choose? The first one where it was added, the most recent, randomly. How do we think about that?
Yeah, I would say the closest answer is probably it's a little bit random. And I know that that's like a deeply unsatisfying answer, but we can actually, let's just go back to the previous exploration that we had. Um, and I can actually go into the workbook and um, let's go into order items and let's clear this out and say, answer user questions here. I don't actually know what's going to happen, but let's actually go into the workbook now and see. The challenge when you get this conflict is often that you really just want to try to add additional metadata. And you can add prompts to ask for follow-ups and things like that as well. So if we wanted it to be less aggressive, I can actually show you some techniques to actually help it disambiguate. But let's again go make a fresh tab so there's no memory. And we can say how many users do we have? And again, like we sort of intentionally modeled our data poorly now. But I think the thing to understand here that's a little bit different. So here it's going to use user count. We'll see which topic it picks. So it picks users. I honestly couldn't explain why, but you can actually have a conversation here. So like, where else, like, what other data sets could I have asked this question about? Actually, this isn't going to work because I'm inside the user's topic now. But you can actually ask it to disambiguate, sort of like, where could I ask questions about users? We're locked inside the user's view right now, but again, sorry, we'll sort of stumble forward here. Let's go into this example. If I ask it in the more generalized version where we're in Postgres demo and we can actually move across, like I can say, where can I answer questions about users? And it will actually provide potentially some disambiguation. So there's a data model called users and it has user demographic. So this is just sort of explaining things in the users table. We can look at user purchase behavior. So like the hard thing that's a little bit tricky is that you actually sort of do want to talk to it and say like, what else can I do? Where else can I do that? Which feels a little bit unnatural because like it's not normally how you use a BI tool. But the more of that context that you can provide, so like if I wanted to look at average order value per users or how many users I have in total, you actually do want to route to different places. Long ramble, but the short answer is just like add a lot of context and sort of see, and it can actually help sort of guide you. Was there another question?
There are several, so I'll
Okay.
share a bunch with you, but they're all kind of related. Okay, so next up we have a follow-up. So is there a way to pull metadata from DBT models into the corresponding views, or does the metadata have to be written in Omni? I'm going to share a few of these, Colin, because they're all kind of related, and
Yep.
then we can go how you want. So that's one question. Another one is asking, can the AI assistant add context to the model directly, or does the user have to go to the model directly? For example, could you just tell it to set AI context so that the questions about users choose the user topic?
Yep.
And we're getting more as I go. So I may cut off in a second and let us
Okay,
get through
so
some of these. But
let me
yeah.
do those two first.
Okay.
So when we are connected to DBT, we will pull through a bunch of metadata. So we'll pull through descriptions on views, we'll pull through descriptions on fields, we will even pull through view context. If you have constraints, we will also pass those in as allowed values on fields. And so that thing that you saw with USA and UK, if you had a constraint applied in DBT, we will actually pull that through and prepare metadata on the model. So we're trying to pull through everything we can. If you have other ideas for other types of metadata that you want to pull through, that is great. The other thing I would say is like we are using often AI context that you can think of again as like a hidden description. there's no reason that you couldn't pick up that AI context and put it into a description and have all of that sitting in dbt. It's a little bit less clean. You're shoving that in front of every single user. But again, like all that's really happening is we're passing metadata to like, this is what a field means. And then we're using that to query. What was it? Okay. Can it do things in the front end? So the short answer is yes. And it can actually do it in a variety of different ways. So if I, for example, here said I think we uncontexted this again, but how many users came from Google? I don't actually know what the answer is going to be here because I don't think traffic source has Google. Okay, so it actually knows that Google is search, and I was trying to get that to mess up, but okay, it's because it's got all values here. So um, let's see if gender has any metadata. I just kind of want to show you okay, so there's no metadata here. Like, let's, how many guys are in the data set? I'm just trying to come up with a synonym for men that's going to fail. No, see, it's probably going to get male. See, this is when AI is actually pretty magical because like I'm trying to get it to go off the rails and it's still actually able to get it. Let's just go kill the metadata on traffic source for a second. And let's update this. And actually, let's go back into traffic source again. So I've got to sort of break this. But again, like this is where it's pretty amazing because it's like it has no way to know that the gender would be male there. Okay, new tab again because we've cleaned this up. Let's go back into users. And let's say, again, like how many users came from Google? So we've removed the metadata. It's going to be incorrect here. We should probably have a better message there. Just try to make a query. So this is a good example where it's like, it doesn't want to ask the question for us. This is just like malformed markdown. It was sort of suggesting options for questions. I don't know why those broke. So it's going to generate a query. It's going to be incorrect. And actually, that was the first example where you can see that the first one failed. The way this actually works is we use Claude 3.5 in Bedrock. If that fails, we will use 3.7. If that fails, we will use 4.0. So we try to prefer smaller, faster models. So this is actually an example where it got it wrong. But now I can say like, what are the traffic sources that we have? And again, like this is where you can start having a conversation and the chat will actually have some memory. So now it's got the traffic sources. Let's stop the explanation. Now I can say, great, using this, how many came from Google? See, and it actually can go through these logical trains of understanding previous queries and actually, well, you can see it didn't do a great job here, even though it says that it understood. Can you try a little harder? So it's not getting this right repeatedly. Remember the valid traffic sources, please. This is not the best example, but in theory, it will learn from these conversations and hopefully make us a good query. But either way, I'm not going to keep trying to do this because it's failing. You'll notice that we have this brain icon. And the brain will try to learn from the conversation and suggest changes to the model that actually improve the precision of the AI. So we'll see what it actually does from this conversation. And this is by no means perfect, but you can see that it is suggesting now this all values that we should add to this field so that we can actually correctly identify the traffic sources and things like that. Again, like this is not perfect, I hope this gets way smarter over time and can sort of suggest things, but you kind of have the option of stumbling through it in the chat itself, or you can have it try to learn from the conversation and actually kind of queue up pull requests. Question.
Okay, awesome. So we're getting several questions. So I just want to let folks know we've also got Connor and Jamie Davidson online who are answering the questions on LinkedIn.
Yep.
So to try and help us get to them. But one question that I wanted to call out specifically is, can a single query from the chatbot synthesize queries from multiple sources? For example, if I ask a question, what is the top selling product and who is this top spending customer? Could it query both the order's topic and the customer's topic and synthesize the results into a single answer?
Great question. At this point, it does not. Free option though to shout out our demos. So we're putting out demos every single week. The thing to understand is this stuff is very much not static. The last first demo that we have, so if you go to omni.co/demos, is actually Blobby, our AI, writing multiple queries and actually synthesizing the results. So we have very intentionally to date locked it to a single query at a time. You sort of have to queue these up yourself, and then it can interpret results. We're moving to a place where it could run two queries in parallel, join them together, run one query, filter on that query and another query, different things like that. It will start improving, and we will start sort of taking the chains off of it and letting it go further and further. So not yet, but very, very close. Okay. Let's go try this new data set again, just because I kind of want to show you like just a sort of fun analytical process, but also like the types of ways that you can do things. So let's start with like, what data do we have here? And it will take a look at our topics. Okay, so we've got some historical team seasons, we've got some team games, we've got some player games. Let's say, what are the best games in the data set on a player basis? And the sort of interesting thing is it's going to find the best individual player performances, and it's going to decide somehow on what is the best. So we'll see what it does. And then from there, we can actually try to have it do some more intelligent stuff. Okay, let's close the chart. Stick to the table. Okay, so we've got a full name, we've got team name, we've got opponent name, game time, points, rebounds, assists, steals, blocks. So it looks like it's just sorting by points. And these are all very good games. But let's actually do a couple things to refine this. So we've got an opponent team name, and let's see what it did here by adding to the work. I think it added the at versus verse, but this is actually sort of a fun example where let's add this to the workbook. It made us a new field based on stuff in the data set. And let's actually go see what that looks like. So this is where you can get the sort of emergent stuff that's really interesting. So if it's the home team, then it's versus. If it's the opponent's team, then it's an at. Very cool. But I don't really love the sort of team name, opponent team name thing. So let's actually go look at what that is. We've got team name. This looks like mascots, which is fun, but I don't know mascots well enough, and they probably are duplicative. So let's try to find the field that is the actual college. And I think it's something like team market. Let's try this. We're in player games. Let's grab team market. Okay. So this is the actual team name. Let's make a new field with market and team name concatenated, and do the same for opponent market and opponent team name. So here we're actually going to have it essentially model data for us. And of course, like we could do this with a calc in the front end and write a concat function. But let's just see if the AI can do it a little bit more quickly across a pair of fields for us. Okay. So now we have the player name, we have the full team name. It didn't do a great job with full opponent name. But let's grab that full team name and we will add that to the model. Okay. Um, and then for the opponent name, let's just clear this out. Can you make opponent market and opponent name concatenated to nothing else, please. And candidly, like sometimes this stuff is actually just faster to write a calc for or go into the model and do if you're comfortable there. Um, I find that this can be kind of a nice lazy workflow where you don't want to think very hard. Um, but I probably would write a calc to do this. So let's see if it gets full opponent name right. Okay. It's still doing the app thing. I don't love it, but let's just leave it for now because I just don't want to mess with this anymore. So we'll add this to the workbook too. Okay. And now I'm going to go through and I'm going to add a little bit of metadata here because I want it to use full team name and full opponent name. So this is a great example where I'm going to say um, when grabbing team or school, prefer this field and not market or name. And let's update that. Actually, let's go back there. Let's go back to full team name. I'm also going to add a little bit of a preview of the values so it knows what these look like. So great, it's got a few of these in there. Let's go to full opponent name. Let's edit this. Okay, this is actually doing exactly what we want now, and not opponent market or opponent name. Let's add some summary values for this. I'm going to add the synonym here as just opponent. Okay, so now we're back. We've added a little model. Okay, so we can come back and say, let's show me the best games again. So high scoring and well-rounded games. Grab some performance metrics. So grab points and minutes. Don't really need the chart if I'm being honest. But I don't love that it's all focused on points. Um, so for the advanced stats folks in sports, we can often take like a bunch of these metrics and combine them together. There's a very famous one in basketball called PER, which is essentially efficiency. Um, I don't actually know how to calculate it, and I quickly Googled it yesterday, but like PER basketball, let's go see. It's complex. So, it does this. Anytime you start breaking out the whatever, I can't remember what the software is that makes equations, but you're in trouble. Um, what I'm going to do here is, can we create a metric like PER that computes game scores using points, rebounds, assists, blocks, steals, and shooting percentage. Please don't use minutes for efficiency, just big stats. So PER actually uses like on a per minute value. Here, I just want sort of the best games. And let's see what it does.
And Colin, while
Mhm.
it's thinking, I have a couple new ones that I'll share with you.
Yeah,
So one question we have, when it builds a new field, does Blobby prioritize between using SQL or an Excel function?
it's a great question that I actually don't know the answer to. Um, I actually have no idea. Um, I know that we will try to use fields that exist first. Um, so we will try to select out things from the data model. I would say this is a place where you need to be careful that when it's creating a new field, what it's doing actually makes sense. So this is going to write probably like a pretty wild field that does some sort of like linear math across these fields. Um, and you do need to be somewhat careful with it. I would say the key, though, is that you can always understand the structure underneath these things. So it's not going to ever write a query. It's going to create theoretically a metric. Let's see what it's doing here. It's getting a little bit stuck, but that happens sometimes. And as it like upgrades models, um, but the short answer is it does a mix, frankly. And we're never going to automatically add things to the model. So what you might have seen when I go back here is that when it makes these new fields, so you'll see that now we have a game score, and it's grabbed a few other metrics, and it's still got our filters. But let's actually open the field picker. When it makes a game score, okay, so here it's done it with a calc. And you can see that what we're doing is just doing some sort of linear math across these values. So it didn't take into account shooting percentage. It did this. But like the idea is that you can actually interpret these things and decide what you want to do with them. Like we're not just going to sort of automatically shove them into the model. That said, like you do sometimes need to check these things. Like if you're going to let it do freeform things, you do want to understand what it's doing here. I'm going to say, can you add turnovers and field goal percentage into the score, please? I'm going to say, think hard. I think that auto upgrades the model. If it doesn't, we like doing it anyway.
Awesome. And Colin, sorry.
Yeah.
While I was thinking on that one, I've got another one for you. So this is a question asking, are the metadata, AI context, and other fields version controlled?
Yes, everything is version controlled. So the way to think about as we're doing these things is, and again, like you can do these in a variety of different ways, but that little bit of tweaking that we did in the data model here is saved by default into this workbook model layer. And you can think about this as a really small data model that is only tied to the stuff that we touched in this session. Let's go back to model mode. Um, and if I go look at, oh, I'm in topics. That's why I'm getting confused. But if I go look at, sorry, let's go back to model mode. If I go look at these player games, you can see that all of the little modeling that we've done is stuck inside here. And if we wanted to, we could actually push this through Git and version it. We have the sort of natural versioning in the app as well. So it can be kind of as light or heavy as you want there. Let's go back and see what it did here. Okay, so it's breaking down the story that it made us. Let's close this workbook model and try to clean up the page a little. But it's got points, it's got rebounds, assist blocks, steals, turnovers has a negative impact, and field goal percentage has an efficiency bonus. And now we actually have our quote unquote top games in the data set. So let's shrink our columns here. Oh my goodness. Let's probably be able to grab these more easily. Oh, it's because I'm in the calc function. So let's get out of here so we can see how we're calculating our metric there. But why is this so hard? Okay, I'm not even going to try to move the columns. For some reason, it's getting stuck. But we can see our top games. What I was going to do now is actually take a look at, let's kill these two. So now we have essentially our top games in the data set. And this is a good example where I can still touch and feel the filters. But I can see all the top games in the data set. We can move back and look at, game times and things like this. So we've made a metric. This is a great example of maybe a metric that we actually want to promote to the workbook. And again, like when we promote it to the workbook, we're going to add a new field. We're going to put that into the data model for this workbook, and we can actually start using it. So let's go find our game score field. Boom, it's right there. And now I'm going to do a quick one. Let's actually try a harder query. So what player has the most games in the top 1,000 game scores? So This is going to be a tricky one because it's going to have to write a query, rank them, and then actually potentially do a filter on the result set. It actually might not even work here, but we'll see. This is where kind of trying to stretch the AI and see what it does can be interesting. Okay, so it didn't work. Um, it tried to create an actual SQL function, and it also did create an aggregate. So this is like the top 100 score. So this isn't quite right. So let's go back here. Um, so grab every player, game ID, and game score. Let's grab the top 1,000. So we'll just grab the three fields. Maybe we should grab dates or something. I don't know. But that was actually a good example where like we tried to do something that was obviously SQL invalid, and the stuff's not perfect. Okay, so this is our top 1,000, um, and great. Can you put a rank calc on this result set and up to 50,000? So now we're going to get the top 50,000 games. I probably didn't need to do this actually, but it's fine. Let's grab the top 50,000 games. And this is just to show you that you can do derivative stuff too. Let's see what it did with the rank function here. It actually wrote us a calculation, which I don't love. Let's actually see how it's doing that. I actually don't even know how it did this. It appears to be right, but I don't know how. Let's actually add this to the workbook. And like, this might not be the way that you want to do it. But this is actually some of the balance that is worth thinking about as you're going to like completely riff in a session. Okay, so it's actually doing like a window function, which I guess is actually fine here. What I'm going to do, I was expecting a calculation. Let's say this is a view, and we'll call this top games. And I will say this query is a view. We'll create a query view. We've got a nice little UI for it. We could add more columns if we wanted to. It's going to rerun that query, but now we can actually just requery this result set. And again, like we can still use AI on top of this little mini thing. Who appears in the top 1,000 games most? But you can actually kind of use these building blocks subsequently and, not use the UI if you really don't want to. Okay, this still didn't do what I want. Let's go make a topic out of this, I guess. So let's go find that. Maybe it has to have a topic to go do this. And again, I can't say that I've done this workflow before. So, top games. Let's make this a topic. You know what? I did explicitly restrict topics here. Let's add top games. And now let's try again. Who appears in the top 1,000 games the most? And then from here, we'll go pivot to show you our internal workflow a little bit.
Okay, and while that's loading, I'll take a second to share a couple new questions. So one question, can we train Blobby to be able to create a group of dimensions in our views, like using group labels, the group labels parameter, and tell the Blobby what it needs to do? Also, can Blobby add color into our values, like adding HTML?
So color, no. We do have modeled constructs for assigning color to things. And this isn't exactly what I want, but probably what I would do is go is less than 1,000. So color, no, but we do have modeled constructs for things like that. In terms of groups, there's actually, again, like two ways that you can do this. you can structurally add groups to the data model. So like we can actually take sets, again, to sort of shout out demos. I believe Jamie demoed a version of sets that we are planning to release very shortly, again, last week. But we've got model constructs for things like this. So model field sets here. The other one is that you can actually tell it what to respond with. So let's actually do a really small example here. We'll go into historical team seasons, and I'll add a little bit of AI context. Let's say, when folks ask about a given season, always include, and let's actually go find the fields that we want to include. Let's go look at which one. Okay, historical team seasons. So this is the wrong one. But let's always grab market, name, season, and team code. Market, name, season, and team code. And whatever else you want. So, what are the best seasons in here? And this is just a really small example where like you can do it in this very casual way that's sort of like this is a suggestion and this is a group of things that you want to use. It didn't grab team code. So that didn't really work. So always include, I'm going to try to scope them and see if it does better. This is actually a good example though, where like, I don't know why it didn't choose this field. If you want, you can always see our debug and you can see the context that we provide. So first I will make sure that that AI context came through. So let's go see if this is in there. Okay, it's not. So I probably had to full refresh the page. So let's try again. Clear the query out. Excuse me. Let's close you again. What are the best? Let's close that debug too. Best seasons in the data set. And hopefully it will actually listen to our context this time. Okay, it still didn't grab it. I don't know why though. Let's again open the debug and see. Somehow this is not passing through. But the general idea here is that you can actually look through the debug and see exactly what we passed to Blobby. Let's just go make an entirely new tab and try. What are the best seasons in the data set? And let's see if it actually chooses. No, it's still not grabbing team code. So this is where it can be somewhat frustrating, to be perfectly honest, but you just want to validate that the context is actually getting passed and that it's picking things up. So for some reason, you can see that we've got some prompts. Again, like all of our stuff is open, so you can actually understand the exact prompt that we are writing. You can see the YAML. I'm not going to try to debug this for too much longer, but we should be able to see it in here, that prompt that we were looking for. And it doesn't appear to be coming through for some reason. Am I in a different workbook? I guess that's possible. No, it's there. We could go figure that out another time. But the idea is that you would actually just add it to the prompt and then you can control it. And then you've got sets underneath it. So the last thing I want to show you is actually the workflow that we use internally. So the first thing is, this is actually an example where we are looking at the AI usage, and I have filtered things down to a specific topic that we have inside Omni. So if I go to our AI assistant, you'll see that we've got a lot of our business modeled, but we most importantly have this anonymized data set of our internal data. And it's like, we sort of just messed with it and changed it, but I can do things like, what trials are open right now? Now let's just go, what trials do we have right now? And this is a very, very highly tuned data set where um, we actually grabbed a whole bunch of data. We anonymized it so that we could actually share it and demo on top of it. Um, and we added a whole bunch of context, and I'll show you what the context looks like in a second. And you'll notice that I'm using the AI experience now. So we've got, like we know what a trial is trial is true, is closed is false. And this is actually an example where it's adding a bunch of those fields that we actually suggest. And to show you the model behind the scenes here, so you can actually understand how we got here, what we did was we added, like, again, so there's a model data set, and you can see that we started adding a whole bunch of context. And there's a bunch of things that I think are actually great that are worth sharing here. So first, for the kind of superpower users, you can add this special call that says, before calling the generate query tool, please do the following, where it will actually explain reasoning, it will offer alternatives, and it will add links. And so that's how we got all of this stuff up here. That was actually done via our prompt engineering in the model. Um, but kind of importantly, we've also explained the types of fields and sort of restrictions that we want. So the example I love is, if asked about closed deals, most often the user means both closed and won. So if I say, you know, how much business have we closed in the last 2 weeks? Again, it's going to be able to decompose that query because it understands closed means successfully won recently. And it's going to do this whole preamble that we asked for, and it will actually go construct these queries. The way that we got to that model, so if we want to look at all the closed deals, great, we can go see them. And, like if I want to go add, let me get my head out of the way here. Who were we competing against in those deals? And so again, like you can have this sort of chain of thought where it's going to go add, to do this, I'll select fields that provide deal identification and competitors that we faced. Again, no rocket science to this, but you can actually kind of go back and forth. So you can see it actually failed the first time and had to redo it, but you can see the competitors that we have were a fake AI company in this data set. So you can see who we're competing against. But again, the way that we did this was actually to literally just publish the data set out and then attempt queries and refine results. And that is actually how we built up all of this AI context. So a lot of what we're doing is we're actually going through and looking at the queries that people are running. So this is actually a lot of our internal use on top of this specific topic, but you can see the types of sessions that we're running. So this is kind of my most common demo query is to, let's go just into the topic. And again, like some people really like the chat UI. I am old school, so I just like this UI, but this is my go-to query. But really all that I'm doing on a weekly basis is actually going through and looking at these sessions, and we can see, frustrations in these data sets. So, actually we use fiscal offset here. We can go lift that into the model. We can also look at people that sort of get stuck in sessions, and that sometimes I literally just pick up these questions and just see, what were the results on this thing and do they need tuning? And that is essentially how we got to this data set is like, when asked about pipeline, we were showing SEs sometimes without the sales rep. This is just an example where it says, like, go grab the sales rep. That's actually the primary person that I want on the deal. Like when grabbing ARR, use the total instead of the dimension. It's these little small preferences that are actually relatively, small, but where you can actually provide that refinement to the UI. Because like that's actually how people query and you can actually follow result sets. So this is the kind of weird part is like a lot of what we were doing is, like Connor clearly had a bad session here. He probably doesn't know that we don't have region in this data set. So when he asked to filter on EMEA, it was obviously going to fail. But this is actually a great learning because I can see like, great, he was trying to do this data set. I'm pretty sure that we don't have region here because I didn't include that field. And we do. Let's see what it says though. So I'll say US. Oh, but it's because Felicity's in the US. Okay, so maybe we do have region. But this would actually be a good example where we're like, we would want to go through this session and actually understand, you know, what is working and what is not working, and how can we refine the result set? So let's actually grab one of these and see, you know, well, this is not a sentence, so maybe that was part of the problem. Did I miss an H? Oh, it's supposed to be show me. Okay. So show me ARR growth across our different segments. Let's actually see what it does. So it's going to use segment. We do try to avoid showing the scope names like this, but sometimes we miss. Tam, did you have a question in the meantime?
Yes, we have a question, and I want to flag we've got about 5 minutes
Yep.
to wrap up. But one, Josh, sorry for taking a little while to get to this one. Question is there a way to query the results of the query without manually creating a view? Could we ask the AI to create the view for us and then query that?
Not quite yet. I tuck that into the bucket of the kind of multi-stage query that we were talking about. We will very likely do more multi-stage stuff over time. So not quite yet. Expect that very soon. And I would also note, you can actually ask it to, uh, great, tell me about interesting trends in this data set. So it can interpret the result sets very directly if you have that turned on. Um, but you can actually see that it can interpret results as well. So it can do some of it. We haven't quite unleashed it again to do chained queries yet. We certainly will. Any other questions?
Yes, let me share. Another one just came in. So, is there a way to see the AI queries that our team asks Blobby so that we can extract synonyms, learnings, et cetera, in the same way that the Omni team does for better AI context?
Yes. So this is my internal view of our data. What I will note, and I just don't have a great place to pull this up, unfortunately, but I'm going to go here for like a half a second and not actually show it to you because it has people's names in it, and I don't want to show it to you. But if you go to your AI assistant, nope, not that actually. If you go to analytics, you will notice that we have a bunch of dashboard tabs. One of them is AI. Under that AI tab, we actually have a log of all the sessions that people have. So it is in there. I don't have a great place to show it to you, but if you go to your analytics, you can actually see exactly what I see here. Um, Anything else?
I believe we've gotten to everything.
Okay. Um, but again, like this is actually a lot of the feedback, like you can actually see when people get frustrated. Um, and you can actually see when people get stuck and say things are not right. Um, but I will just kind of quickly show you what the impact of having all of that context does. So what I'm going to do in this workbook is I'm going to actually go in and cull out this entire bit of context for a second. We can leave the content zone by Colin just so there's something in here. And you'll see that we've got some sample queries. I'll kill these too. Um, so now we've trimmed off a lot of the metadata. But now if I say, like, what business have we closed this week? Well, see, it's doing a good job here. It grabbed close one date. So no, it didn't. It grabbed close date. So this is actually a great example now where it's got close date this week for 1 week. It has op name, IRR, close date, opportunity owner. Let's grab a very important field, which is whether the deal is won or not. And I presume that, yeah, okay. So this has a ton of losses in it. This shows you how important all of that curation is because this is a list of closed deals. But with no context, it actually leads you towards uh, a result that requires more interpretation than the user probably wants to put into the result set. Like, obviously, we want to filter for wins. This is actually the most core challenge for doing a lot of the AI modeling is that you need to take things that are implicit and make sure that they are actually doing the things that they need to do. So you need to have a list of queries that you expect people to ask that are framed in certain ways so that when a user goes into this data set, they're actually finding the thing that they need and interpret it the way they're supposed to interpret it. And if I could just kind of close with, I think the takeaway that I had that was sort of most salient from doing a lot of this AI stuff is these are actually the problems that your users probably have when they're navigating the tool in general. When they come in and they look at opportunities, they grab the name and they grab the IRR or ARR, I don't know. Uh, they grab the close date and they're wondering why it's full of lost deals. And the reason is because there's more context than that user has for interpreting that data set. And modeling for AI is really just turning all of that into metadata in your data model. That is all you're doing, is just understanding how people are doing things and adding metadata and nudging it back towards the things that people actually need. So we rambled a lot there. We could probably do this for a lot longer too. And like if someone has a fun data set, we could go try to riff on it next week or something. But this is really all there is to it. So glad that people could watch, but I promise all of you can make this happen.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Colin. And thank you so much to everyone who joined us. I apologize if we missed any questions. We tried to get to everything. If you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out and send them our way. In the chat, I did just drop an article from Ariel Strong, our head of product, that goes through a little bit the high level of adding AI context and how you can think about this. So be sure to check that out. And I also just wanted to call out two final things. Colin referenced it a couple times, but our engineering team, demos what they build every single Friday, and we post those videos publicly. So on omni.co/demos, you can follow along, see what we built, see what's in progress. We're very transparent about it. So feel free to check it out. And then the last thing I just wanted to say is, for a reminder for folks, we have been recording, so you can continue to come back to it. It's the exact same link right here on LinkedIn. And feel free to reach out if you have any data sets for us next time. Seems like we might be doing this again soon. Thanks all.